Swami. I'm at the School of Environment and Sustainability at the Indian Institute for Human Settlements. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a very interesting panel, Contested Ecologies, Climate Adaptation, and the City. So, as we enter into this era of responding to climate change, there is a emerging political economy around uh, climate change adaptation as well as mitigation. And so there is a political ecology critique that's happening already because all of uh, the the new responses to climate change that are emerging in cities and elsewhere, they actually build on existing structures, economic, political, and other aspects of our development paradigms. And therefore, in some sense, it could be, um, just old wine in a new bottle in terms of the political ecology implications. And I think what this set of presentations is really a diverse set of presentation that I think will give us a glimpse into how we should be critically looking at the emerging responses, which are called nature-based solutions, blue and green infrastructure, and heat stress mitigation. So all nice things, good stuff, but they all have things that have perhaps trade-offs with many other things that we care about and we should care about. So without any further delay, I'm going to call upon Mesra from the University of Kassel to make the first presentation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mesra Öner Kara from Department of Architecture, Cities, Economies at University of Kassel. And in this presentation, I examine how infrastructure of the green transition, such as dams, solar farms, and wind power plants, operate not only as environmental solution, but as instruments of territorial reconfiguration and extraction. The focus is northern Kurdistan and a predominantly Kurdish region in eastern Turkey that is marked by protracted conflict, long-term ecological destruction, and strong tradition of grassroots governance. While the green transition is often framed as a moral and technical necessity, I argue that in conflict-affected regions, it has distinct spatial and political effects. And this is why I approach it through the lens of contested terrains, space, place, and scale. In much global discourse, the green transition is presented as a universal and technical pathway to sustainability. However, in conflict affected regions, infrastructure is never merely technical. Energy projects consolidate state presence, reorganize land use, and reshape ecological relations through legal and financial instruments. In northern Kurdistan, renewable energy expansion is closely tied to international financial institutions and state development agendas. Law, finance, and infrastructure operate together as mechanism of territorial governance. Through this mechanism, territory, population, and resources are made governable. I want to show a visual from Silvan Dam project in Diyarbakır, which is in northern Kurdistan. It is a huge investment, threatens around 50 villages. And here you can see its protection is accompanied by a nearby high security military base with helicopter pads, and it's underscored that the militarization of infrastructure in the region. Of course, to understand contemporary renewable energy projects, it is important to briefly situate them within the region's longer infrastructural history. Since 1970s, northern Kurdistan has been shaped by large-scale state-led dam construction, which is part of a huge project in the region. And although framed as development and modernization, these projects operated as territorial strategies that reorganize land, water, and population. These large-scale dam projects are commonly referred to as Southeastern Anatolia Project or GAP. And what matters for this discussion is continuity. Today's solar and wind projects do not represent a break from this history. Instead, they extend earlier infrastructural regime, now justified through the language of sustainability and green transition. You can see here a map. This map shows Turkey's electricity transmission network. And as you can see, energy generated in northern Kurdistan is transported along a diagonal transmission corridor toward industrial region in western Turkey. And it reveals a highly uneven and non-redistributive energy geography. Unfortunately, all kind of energy which generated renewable oil-based or dam-generated energy follow the same directional logic and it reinforced extraction rather than equitable distribution. These dynamics become very visible at some specific sites. For example, in Pult district of Diyarbakır, a large solar panel power plant has been approved on village pasture land and directly threatening water sources and animal husbandry, which are central to local livelihoods. Another well-known case is Hasankeyf, where dam construction led to the submergence of settlements and the loss of ecological and historical landscapes. Through this expropriation, land reclassification, and the creation of energy corridors, green infrastructure operates as a spatial technology that territorialize and securitize contested geographies. And importantly, these processes are closely connected to ongoing political dynamics. The practice of ecological resistance in northern Kurdistan are rooted in earlier experiments with radical democracy, which emerged in 2000s. These include assemblies, women councils, cooperatives, and even communal land management. Although many of this structure were later dismantled or suppressed, their effect persisted as sedimented capacity for collective action. A clear example is the village of Cilse in Kulp district, where women-led sustained protests against solar panel projects, which threatening local ecosystem and water channels. These struggles drove directly on earlier democratic organizing practices. Finally, these transformations are inseparable from question of scale and finance. Renewable energy projects link villages to national grids and global carbon markets. And we know it's through blended finance mechanism and technocratic tools such as maps, models, and impact reports. And it shows us dispossession thus occurs not only through force, but also through abstraction. At the same time, local actors continue to re-anchor space through practices of care, solidarity, and repair. This minor infrastructure of resistance generated stated forms of spatial politics. To conclude, I argue that the green transition in conflict regions should not be understood as a linear or purely technological shift, but as a contested field shaped by power, extraction, and everyday resistance. And you may see here again women resist the projects in their community. Thank you very much. This is my reference. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
So the next talk is going to be by Sabrinath.
Hi, my name is Shabrinath. I am a research associate at Indicc Associates. We are based out on Jaipur, Rajasthan.
Hello everyone, I'm Pravanjan. I'm a policy analyst at Indicc, and together we'll be presenting our research, which is on the heritage city of Jaipur.
I'll just quickly take you through how we actually got into this research topic. So we actually started with first analyzing how the temperature scenario has changed in Jaipur and its nearby areas. So when we did that thing, we identified that Jaipur has like a two kind of what you say city size. One is the old city, one is the new city, and old city is also called the walled city, which was planned in 1727, and so we kind of looked at, okay, what is the temperature scenario there, and that's when we encountered this topic of the climate and the heritage. So when starting the research, our first question was, what is actually a heritage, or what transfers to heritage, or what are the values that will create a certain heritage? And that's when we did our like a secondary literature review, and also uh, reached out to other heritage stakeholders within the city, and we were able to identify that heritage is like a selective record, which can actually create that memory or lived experience from the past, which shape their creation and the sustenance of that identities in the city. And this determines through a curated of way that what values as a heritage, like you can see here, we call this as the regime of legibility, that it creates a globally a hierarchy of value, meaning what constitute as a heritage and what can be preserved and what should not be preserved or what won't be preserved. But here, that interesting aspect coincides with the extreme urban heat that is happening or like taking place right now in the old city. Yes, and to understand this, first we had to go see like what was the historical aspect, how the city came up, or what is the whole city about. And it was conceived in 1727 by Maharaja Sabai Jai Singh, and brought to life by the architect Vidyadhar Bhattacharya. And among four major walled cities in India in the northern and central part during the ancient medieval period, Jaipur was the only city which was planned as in it was planned to give each, like you can see in the map, there are squares or we call choppers dedicated for each sections as in like belonging to traders, artisans, and certain jobs which can bring from different parts of the state and country and bring them in one place, so to enable that trade and commerce aspect. And this was considered at a, what to say, keeping in mind the climate aspect that the city is already experiencing, that was extreme heat and the drought and the rainfall, like less rainfall scenario. So which we'll move on to the in the next slide. Yes. So the city was conceived with the climate consciousness in mind, where the architecture, that alignment of the city was an iron grid pattern in an east-west direction, reducing the solar exposure to the minimum. And also the height and of the buildings was controlled, and the width of the pathway were controlled in such a way that the shade from the buildings will transfer onto the street. And havelis, which are the individual houses, they had big courtyards which collected heat from surrounding areas, which acted as a natural ventilation system called the stack effect, and it released heat upwards. Then also the material, it only used locally sourced material, which was sandstone and lime, in order to not trap the heat inside. But what is the current reality? Even though the heritage included all these aspects, what is the current present reality when we consider the thermal aspect of the city? So currently, because why is heat is important for the city anyway? That was always the question, because Jaipur is historically a city which experiences higher temperature and extreme temperature scenario. But in the modern days, when we do the satellite imaging, which we use the land surface temperature, we identified that the walled city area, which was 709 hectares, they experienced 5 to 6 degrees Celsius higher than the surrounding areas in the peak summer times. So one question remained within our minds was like, why this happened? Because the urban heat island effect mostly associated with the built aspect, and the density of the place hasn't changed that much to a like bigger scenario. Only the population has changed. So what was the actual aspect contributing to the present thermal stress? That was our question. And when we so in order to understand this, we had multiple interviews and multiple stakeholder meetings with officials, with NGOs, and people who are on the ground, traders there, where we were able to identify this fabric that is happening underneath the space. Because you have the main street, which is like a major attraction called the Hawa Mahal and the supported markets, where the facade and the material with which the building has to be, any retrofitting has to be done or maintained, that was controlled. But when you go into the inner streets, there is no material guidelines in when you do a retrofitting or reconstruction. So reconstruction became the major problem in increasing the built aspect of the space. But what was this reconstruction? This reconstruction had a contested path. A contested path, by which I'm meaning that like you had families who owned the Havelis. Havelis are individual units owned by families. But after a certain point, because of the congestion and the population and demographic pressure, these families moved out of the old city because of the pressure, and either sold it to a commercial entity, or they rented out the system in order to divide the money easily among their legal heirs and everything. But the commercial entity, what they did, they registered this property as dilapidated condition, and they did the reconstruction part. So, but then when they did the reconstruction, there is a design manual they have to follow, that the outer facade has to maintain this certain design, colors, and shapes, but there is no material manual. So what they did, they replaced this sandstone and limestone, which were naturally not trapping heat, to RCC and other substances which could trap heat. And also, what the other, in order to make more rain space for room, because they converted into boutique hotels and Airbnbs, they closed the ventilation gaps or the big courtyards, which actually created the stack effect to create more space, thereby trapping the heat more. So heritage is now just about controlling the facade, and that majorly on the major street.
So then we come to the aspect of who actually oversees this heritage and what people perceive as heritage. So in 2021, the Jaipur Nagar Nigam proposed a guideline. They actually came out with the act which set up a heritage a cell, and at three levels. So apex level is the state heritage committee headed by the CS. Then you have technical committee which oversees the functioning of heritage cell in the Jaipur Nagar Nigam heritage part, and it looks after what material guidelines or what construction permission could be given. Material guidelines are not there as such. What constructions or reconstruction permission, what development could be allowed or not allowed. And then you have a heritage cell which actually enforces these things on ground as per the organizational setup. But when we come to the actual institutional mapping, we see there are multiple institutions which are basically managing some things or the other. Someone is managing the master planning of the area. Another one is providing for sanitation. Someone is looking at, so there is AMDA, which is looking specifically at the monuments and all. Then you have beautification of the roads and widening of the roads being done. Some are not mentioned here, such as the metros construction. So there has been multiplicity of governance of government over this place, but all of them have actually missed out on what we are trying to mm, sort of see or look after. Actually, who manages the environment and the climate and the condition of the place? Basically, what makes the place livable? So that part remains a miss. So that brings to our argument.
Yeah, because like even when we trade through the argument of Maslow, what a place is, it's like a meeting point of tides, which is not never a static location. It changes throughout history, throughout the policies, and the connection that it intersect together. And Wall City was one such a place where multiple aspects intersected together. But when you look at the current scenario, it is a contested place, and when we understood that this contestation, it was happening at three different levels. One was at this density space where you have limited or stacked and compacted built infrastructure, where you have a massive demographic density where nearly 6 lakh residents are in 6.04 square kilometer. That is almost 90,000 plus people in 1 square kilometer. Then how Prabhajan rightly mentioned the governance aspect, and that is where another conversation is happening. Then the major part, what you're trying to do is the climate and heritage conflict, which where the city has already embodied the thermal wisdom. Yet currently, because of the less thermal efficient buildings, these thermal stress is coming back, and also they are not able to adapt, because when you do any kind of other like retrofitting, that is affecting the heritage, that perceived value that created.
So then we come at different sort of stakeholders and actors who have their own contestation of the place. So we have broadly heritage conservators, resident and traders, climate scientists, and climate advocates, who all are like sort of saying different things. So for heritage conservators, the facade is what actually matters. For residents and traders, it is different. If the resident is the residing in the place, they want basically livable conditions. So for them, heritage actually takes a backseat than livability. Then for traders, both of them matter because it is the heritage that is providing them with sort of perceived premium compared to other places, so they can make up a good living. But they also have to live throughout the day to the place. So for them, both of them matters. Then you have climate scientists or people who basically sort of do technical suggestions, and we can always do adaptive construction or maybe use technologies to adapt to the climate. And then we have climate slash heritage advocates who are like let's go back to what it was rather than just constructing mindlessly. So for different stakeholders, it's like they imagine the place to be what they would like it to be, and that then brings to this framework. So when UNESCO designated the heritage city, Jaipur as the heritage city, it sort of brought out three frameworks. So UNESCO already does.
Prabhajan, could you wrap up?
Yes, yes. So these are the hierarchical regime of legibility, and then
yeah. Then we come back to similar argument that was what, because when we started this, the major question we encountered or we even had with ourselves was how do we preserve the heritage while adapting the heat? But when we did this detailed study and also on the climate and adaptive part, how our question and what our argument is actually is in the adapting to the climate was the actual true heritage to the place, because the architecture, the element, the facade, the and everything, the materials that all you see there was not just for there to see. It was to adapt to a certain condition. It was to enable a certain condition. So if that condition is not built right now, then is the heritage truly existing, or is it not there? That was one.
And that leaves us with these questions. We are short of time, so short time we'll leave you with this. And we would like to thank the opposition people for providing their input. And thank you.
Thanks, Aprinath, Prabhajan.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next talk is going to be by Nidhi Sone.
Yes, thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm going to discuss slow onset climate change and ruptures in homing. Using this as a framework, I'm going to investigate ontological and political implications in southern urbanisms. To give you a very quick snapshot of how we're going to run through this today, I'll start by situating the inquiry. discuss the conceptual framework, and then I'll begin unpacking meso categories that I'm developing to capture these ontopolitical shifts, illustrating them through fieldwork that we are doing as part of the Wellcome Trust project in IIHS. And then I'll conclude with a few notes on the relevance of this work. So it is established and noted in literature that climate change is a threat multiplier. And it is also noted that compared to rapid onset events like floods and hurricanes, etc., slow onset climate change like increasing mean temperature, changing seasons, drought, desertification, these receive considerably less attention in both scholarship and in popular discourse. This includes measurement of loss and damages, impact on life, whether it is driver of other changes like migration, intersection of slow onset climate change with other socioeconomic political aspects, and amplification and exacerbation of threats and vulnerabilities. This also includes gaps in figuring out advocation of action for slow onset climate change. The impact on margins is quite notable, even if it is not sort of articulated in popular discourse or scholarship. Margins also are those that face most disproportionate effect of climate change and are easily excluded from climate action, from planning documents around climate action. They're also least represented. In this sort of backdrop and in this sort of intersection of discourse, my research question is what forms of ontological and political shifts are happening as life in margins intersects with impacts of slow onset climate change. So I'm looking at how is this intersection of different slow onset impacts with other aspects of life changing the way one perceives the world and one's own capacity to sort of act around it, and what it is doing to the political agency and capacity to mobilize and take either collective or individual action. So I have a fourfold conceptual framework that I use to sort of unpack this space. The first is incrementality, and basically the overlaying of the slow temporality of climate change, the different socio-economic political aspects that are unfolding, and incrementality of life in southern urbanisms. So when temporality is this major lens through which I am looking at all of these things and then overlaying these different rhythms and discontinuities of different temporalities across different scales. The second is to overlay this, or sorry, this text is not the right thing, but to look at when these three different things overlay, these three temporalities overlay, how we can look at ruptures that are occurring in lives of people. The third is to look at labor that people the labor that people undertake to respond to these ruptures. And finally, the fourth is to look at the shifts that are cumulatively being that are cumulatively manifesting in the form of ontological and political changes and alterations to people. So this, I look through how people articulate what responses they take, as well as how they articulate their own self when they talk about this. This is a pictorial depiction of this, which probably makes it easier. We overlay these different temporalities. We look at what ruptures are being caused. We look at the labor that is being done by people in response to these ruptures. And then we look at cumulatively what shifts these cause over time. I'm going to take a case of a woman named, codenamed SM from from our Patna fieldwork. So SM lives in a settlement called Nehru Nagar, which is an informal settlement in the middle of Patna. Nehru Nagar faces like is characteristic of most informal settlements in India, in Indian cities, it faces infrastructural disruptions, which includes frequent electricity cuts, especially in summer, poor access to drinking water because of depleting groundwater, and other basic infrastructure sort of hindrances and obstructions, for instance, drainage, garbage collection, etc. So SM is a 60-ish-year-old woman. She lives with her husband and son in a single-story house. The house has a metal roof. She irons clothes for a living, and the picture you see is a sketch of her house where she does the ironing. You will see a little thing in the bottom corner, which is a traditional way of heating coal, and then you use steel or iron, metal iron, to sort of heat it on the coal and then use it to iron clothes. So she doesn't use electricity to do that. These are this is from an interview, or actually two interviews that we've had through the summer season with her. So you'll see also in the image there's a little fan on the top left corner. So we ask her, do you use this fan when you're working? Is this enough for you? And she says, no. If I use this fan, the clothes will start flying, so I can't. So then we ask, how do you manage then? She says, these are translated quotes. She says, my body gets drenched in sweat. I cannot tolerate it. It is completely drenched. I cannot tolerate it. I keep sitting and ironing clothes. I cannot tolerate it. However, a little while later, we ask her, how do you keep yourself cool? And she says, we live like this only. If one feels hot and there is no electricity, I sit outdoors. What else will one do? I think, yeah, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip through it. The second one was also about heat and her talking about heat, but also in the same breath saying that things were different in the past, but also what is she to do? So overlaying this on the framework I just talked about. So on a climate level, we see higher mean temperatures depleting groundwater. On the scale of urban, socioeconomic, political changes, we see urbanization and heat island effect, power cuts, infrastructural gaps. And on a household level, we see livelihood requirements, poor housing materiality, and her compulsion to be working in summer, not using the electricity that she does have access to. So when we layer these things, we start seeing ruptures. The ruptures are then combated through labor, which is physical, emotional, financial cost trade-off, sometimes not working because she cannot work in that heat, so losing livelihood, sometimes going through the work despite it, like the quote she had said. And then the ontological shifts, when we start layering this and we start looking at it, when she says we live like this only, if one feels hot and there is no electricity, I sit outdoors, what else is there to do? This is easy to sort of overlook, but when you start looking at it in the lens of what it does to one's agency or one's own relation to how one sees things, it is a normalization. It is an exhaustion to say that what else is there to do? There's nothing else to do. Even when just 2 minutes ago in that same articulation, she's saying, I cannot tolerate it. Mujhse bardasht nahi hota, mere se bilkul bardasht nahi hota. So it's important to juxtapose both of these and see what it is doing to their own sense of self. And so this repetition, this constant experience of uncertainties or inability to predict or whether it is going to be hot or cold, or whether it is going to rain, or whether you're going to have access to water or not, and one's own limitation to affect how much change you can do, when it starts intersecting with different identities that one inhabits, one starts also to see at a larger scale what ontological implications it is having for those who are inhabiting in the margins. We should be talking about these because of how it can converse with paradigms of measuring loss and damage, not just material loss and damage, but the loss and damage to political agency. Paradigms of defining resilience and coping, adaptation and adaptive capacity. When we talk about people's adaptive capacity on the ground, what are the costs at which these capacities or these adaptation or maladaptation practices are sort of taking shape, and then to politicize the space through a Marxist feminist lens. Three meso categories that I want to quickly talk about because we're short of time is first is normalization, which is you're normalizing extremes because of continual experience to them. So you start thinking this is the new normal. The second is exhaustion and altering sense of self, where you alter your own understanding of your own capacity, your self-worth, your agency, or your dispensability as labor, or alienation in very Marxist terms of your own of labor in terms of their own sort of identity or their own ability to be stopping. So a common motive that we see and feel is we can't do anything, we have to work because we have to earn. Even though we are exhausted, we don't have a choice, we have to work, we have to earn. Agar hum ruk jayenge to khana kaise khayenge? So this depleting ability to even voice or even sort of try and stop because of how oppressed the system sort of makes you. And then defuturing is taking away from one's own future to fare through the present. And also orientations to future. This I'm borrowing from Bryant and Knight's work on how one looks at futurity and one's own self, one's own sense of the future. And this collapse of hope, this inability to speculate, or this inability to rely on previous experience to think, acha, what else is going to happen? How am I going to deal with it? And I will stop here. I think, yeah. Few concluding points. Do I still have a minute? Okay, minutes out.
Just
Okay,
quickly.
Yeah, just to sort of talk about, use this aspect. I mean, the contribution this can do is to take this as a method as well as a heuristic in how we listen to people and how we can sort of politicize this space of intersection and not only talk about people's agency and the labor, but also what trade-offs are happening and be able to forefront their articulation and experience of this space. And there is literature on eco grief, eco anxiety, and there are other conversations. But to really talk about what this experience of what this ontological shift looks like when we put it in a context which is already marginalized, which is already facing depleting sort of agency, disenfranchisement, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi. So the next talk is going to be by Ayushi, Saket, and Ankit.
So, good evening, everyone. I am Ayushi Dhar. I'm a PMRS scholar from the Department of Architecture and Regional Planning, Institute of Technology, IIT Kharagpur. And this paper is co-authored with Dr. Shoikat Kumar Paul, my supervisor, and my colleague Ankit Kumar Senapati from the same department. And this is part of my ongoing doctoral thesis, so feedback is most welcome. So today I'm going to talk about the lacunae of existing greening frameworks in India. And so my presentation is titled Counting Trees, Missing People, the Blind Spot of Urban Greening Metrics in India. So just to introduce and set the context, we see that cities all over the globe and even in India, they are using urban greening, framing it as a climate solution, a technocratic solution, sort of to sequester carbon, mitigate heat, and restore ecological balance in rapidly urbanizing environments. And we are all aware of these many benefits of urban trees, like right from cooling to protecting biodiversity to reducing air pollution. Reducing stress, etc. And these are becoming very concerning in today's time, especially with rising heat and pollution. But what we fail to sometimes note is that compared to other vegetations, trees provide more regulating services. So they are a little more important when it comes to mitigating some of these environmental externalities. And another thing is most of these environmental benefits that are provided by trees are localized. So that makes the spatial distribution of trees important. But in the Indian context, we see that tree cover is often seen as a quantifiable environmental asset rather than a lived, spatially embedded common. So we take the case of three current greening schemes or monitoring frameworks. The first is Trees Outside Forest, which is conducted by the Forest Survey of India. Then the other two are more related to planning, green spaces in cities, which is the Smart City Mission, and Nagarvan Yojana. So, firstly, we'll look at trees outside forest. So we see that the TOF inventory classifies all trees outside recorded or protected forests. So basically in urban areas, this is important, into block, linear, and scattered categories depending on the patch geometry. Now, for so many cities in India, there are 10,000 sampling plots of 5 by 5 kilometer each, delineated based on the National Statistical Office, this UFS blocks. So the thing is that many cities don't have this, and it is in general an accounting framework. So this works to keep a check on the state level tree cover, what is happening. So that is why the results are aggregated at state level. But what this means for cities is that we don't have the ward level information necessary for targeted interventions. And coming to the smart city mission, so it has been criticized by several authors for its singular prioritization of recreational functions of open space. So, in order to meet the 12 to 15% URDPFI target, parks and open spaces are often retrofitted with aesthetic intent, prioritizing paved plazas, ornamental lawns, and horticultural species without any mandates for tree covers. So we often come across, environments like this, where parks are mostly composed of ecologically fragile lawns, water intensive, electricity intensive, etc. Or there is a lot of, input of solar lamps or battery charging facilities, etc., and so on. And meanwhile, at another extreme, we have the Nagarvan Yojana, which is essentially a funding mechanism to assist in tree plantations, but in again existing parks and gardens of minimum 1 hectare area. So it is exclusionary in where trees can be planted. And again, the issue is that when it comes to existing parks and gardens, sometimes what happens is there are these entry fees to these large parks, which is meant to provide some return on investment to the companies who are, or the city as well. So that makes it exclusionary, and it becomes like the spatial access to these green infrastructures is reshaped in this way. So, in effect, we see that tree cover inequality, the uneven spatial distribution of trees across wards or neighborhoods, remains largely invisible in Indian policy and data. So, we are not able to answer questions like where are the shade bearing trees and who has access to shade and who doesn't. So, against this backdrop, the present study examines Kolkata, a dense colonial metropolis, to explore the mismatch between city level tree cover metrics and local level inequalities in tree cover represented by tree cover per capita. So, it is going to be a spatially disaggregated assessment of tree cover at the ward scale. And we have used high resolution tree cover data, openly accessible data from Google Earth Engine, 1 meter resolution, to see what impact, higher resolution data could have in affecting the results of inequality. And the distributional dimension of greenness will be quantified by tree cover by per capita, and Gini index, which is borrowed from the field of economics. It's an inequality metric to measure the inequality. So this is just a brief background of Kolkata, that it is a former colony on the banks of the Hooghly River in the fertile Gangetic Plains, which is why over time there have been different patterns or influxes of population and so on, which has eventually resulted in a very densely populated metropolis. And it has around 30,000 persons per square kilometer on an average. And so if you see the maps, you'll find that there is kind of a north-south divide, and anybody from Kolkata would be able to relate to this better. That there is not only a difference in population density and morphological form, but also the kind of perceptions of people in these places. So yeah, so that is why, due to the difference, a variation in population density, it becomes a good case to check whether local variations in tree cover are going to matter or not. So we see when we did this disaggregated assessment, we found that at the ward scale, the tree cover per capita ranged from as low as 0.27 square meter per capita to 56.87 square meter per capita, with a mean of 7.1 square meter and a median of 5.3 square meter, which might be more important, given that there are some outliers in Kolkata as well. But the fact remains that there is this wide of an inequality across these different wards, and which is not going to ever get captured in through sampling units or even city level metrics. So we see that dichotomy between the north and south is almost evident, where these dense settlements in the north, they have much lesser canopy than the South Kolkata zones, where the plot sizes, the number of institutions, and all are also higher. So when we see this in terms of the Lorentz curve, so here we see that the bottom 50% of the population over here, the bottom 50% of the population has access to less than 20% of the city's tree cover. So resulting in a Gini index of 0.477, which is a moderate to high inequality in tree cover distribution. So again, reinforcing the idea that there is a lot of inequality, but city level averages would provide a misleading sense of adequacy, masking extreme local disparities in green access. However, there are some points that may be noted in this study. Since we have used a different data set, a 1 meter resolution data set, we were able to capture a lot more greenery than the 10-meter resolution data set used by trees outside forests. So that is why the overall aggregate tree cover of Kolkata, in terms of just the area of trees, has come up as 17% versus 34.85 square kilometer versus 1.77 square kilometer. Yeah, okay. And the metric construction, the fact that tree cover per capita is sensitive to population density also has a potential to skew the results, because in wards with extremely high population density, like the North Kolkata wards, we see that TCPC is low despite comparable tree cover in some of these wards. And similarly, in wards with extremely low population density, the tree cover per capita comes out as very high. And one second, not able to change the slide. One second, I'll just try to change. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so then, and third, there is, this study is just looking at tree cover inequality. So this is just the start to a long journey, which I feel that, Indian greening policy has a long way to go in this regard, because inequality is just looking at the inequality in the benefits, whereas equality would be when both, like it involves looking at the even distribution, like how to make this happen. But then also equality always might not be enough, equity, the lens of equity is more important because the system might be shifted such that vulnerable populations, despite having the same amount of tree cover, are probably not, it might not be enough for those wards. And lastly, there would be, justice, where basically the system is fixed to offer equal access to all groups. So, yeah, there is a long way to go, but this study primarily sets the foreground for such inequity metrics like tree equity score, etc. Nevertheless, this could the ward level monitoring frameworks could also guide targeted intervention in low tree cover per capita guides wards. So, in conclusion, our study had set out to understand the ways in which India's current greening frameworks, particularly the trees outside forests inventory, reshape territorial access to tree cover, and existing greening benchmarks dominated by physical area or percent cover are not going to capture who benefits from urban tree cover and who remains excluded. So we need to bring inequality into focus at the least. And we have argued for human-centered greening metrics that connect with the socio-demographic fabric of cities. And this is especially important in today's age of data-driven planning, where the scale of data has significant implications for policy. So counting trees is not enough. Understanding who lives beneath them and who does not must become central to how we design, evaluate, and sustain our environments. Thank you.
Thanks, Ayushi.
Yeah.
I'd like to open the floor for questions to Mesra, Sabrinath, and Prabhanjan, Nidhi, and Ayushi.
Hi, I'm Vijay. I'm a PhD student at IIHS. I have one question and one comment for Ayushi. Very interesting presentation looking at tree cover. I just wanted to check with your data, what's the city level average compared to ward? And also, I think some recent studies have sort of already established ward as non-homogeneous spatial entity that, when you talk about equity or justice, even if it's measured at ward level or if the interventions are at ward level, that may not necessarily translate into equity or justice. Perhaps a street level or some other sub-ward level geography would be the better analytical unit. But do you think that's possible with the methodology that you have followed?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good question. And in short, no, it would not be. Having the word as the unit of analysis definitely has its own limitations, but we have been using it, especially because I'm a planner. We use it more often because there is access to socio-economic data as well, the census data sets at that scale. But definitely within wards as well, there would be a lot of variation in, of course, like land use, the kind of settlements, the kind of people. So I don't expect like institutional campuses to have the same tree cover as, say, low income housing colony as same. So definitely it needs to be a lot more microscopic than it is. But this study was just to set the foreground that even considering ward as the resolution of analysis, that this much of a disparity is there. So yeah, definitely for equity, when it comes to understanding like the vulnerabilities of the socioeconomic groups, so yeah, it will need a much finer analysis. And you were asking about the ward level means, I believe, versus the city. So it was, I think it's around 7 square meter in average across the city. But at the ward level, it varies from 0.28 or something till up till 56 square meter.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to all of the presenters. That was really interesting. I have a question to two of the presentations. So first to Mesra. I was just wondering if you could give more detail about the actors involved in the energy transition and the rapid infrastructural changes, specifically the non-state actors or corporate actors, and whether engaging with these different actors, if you can see a difference in the resistance tactics or strategies. And then I had a question to Sabarinath and Prabhanjan. Are there instances of kind of convergence or coherence in logics or desires between the heritage activists or architects and maybe residents who are occupying buildings? This is very speculative, but who are occupying buildings that may be set for demolition or eviction. And yeah, what if there are these instances? If you have anything more to say on that, thank you. Oh, and I'm Julia Hope from the African Center for Cities at UCT.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It is really important, the role of actors. First of all, for the grand transition, I can say local and national actors are very active. Local companies and national companies conducted these projects, and government provide them some they facilitate their activities in the land. For example, for the permission and giving the land with very cheap rental cost or even for free, and also the role of supranational organization are very limited, as I see, because as I understand, they hesitate to involve. For example, EBRD or World Bank, they are very active when we check the example of the Global South in the last years. But I think they have a lesson learned from these projects, because they have a resistance, and this topic was very popular and discussed in academia and in among the activists also. Therefore, they hesitate to provide credit directly to these companies who are active now for the renewable energy projects in northern Kurdistan. But it is a big trend, and I see many national companies and they have some consortium, and then they partner in Europe and in other foreign country. They are very active. On the other hand, for the resistance, local people, especially women, are very active. Even they are proactive for organizing the demonstration. Also, local NGOs and the chambers also, they always in a cooperation with local people, and an alternative media always support these demonstrations. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Mesra. Sabrinath, Prabhanjan.
Actually, thank you for the question. So there is convergence and there is not. What I would start with, because there is a major street in the city which actually connect to the older Nahargarh fort, which was actually the capital before moving to the city in near to the plains. So in that major street is where the major economical activity and everything is centered, and that's where the major monuments like Hawa Mahal Palace and everything and the shops are centered. That's where actually heritage architects and conservation their arguments, and the people who are residing there or being there, their arguments are like same, because in that place the heritage facade and the material is controlled. You cannot do anything reconstruction there with different material. But when you go inline, which are Haveli, which are individually owned household, there is nothing. Just facade is there. Like it's saying that the thing is material aspect is not there.
And also in the inner parts of the city, which are not on the main road, there is conflict between heritage activists, architects, and the owners slash residents, because in the inner parts you do not get much of perceived value of heritage, because you cannot open up the shops, restaurants, or people not generally like to go inside narrow streets. So people basically living in the inner parts are ones who are owner and residents. So they want to basically change or adapt the building for the livability and the conditions which are actually being exacerbated by the day. So in the inside parts of the heritage city is a conflict on the main streets due to value of the heritage and it adding economic benefits. Yeah, convergences. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there is a question to Nidhi online. It says anonymous attendee. But how are you defining ontologies in your study, in your context? What counts as an ontologic claim?
So, like I mentioned, I am looking at how people view themselves and their relation to the world as a entry point into looking at their relationship with the present, with the future. So I'm borrowing from Bryant and Knight, from Madina Tlotsanova, and a bit from Anna Singh to sort of understand the different ways climate interacts with our sense of self, or our sense of making sense of the world. So concepts like unsettlement, defuturing, orientations to the future. Yeah, those are the sort of conceptual tools that I'm using to sort of build onto this.
Folks, any questions?
So this is a question. Hi, I'm Amit. This is a question to, sorry, Sabrinath and Prabhajan Singh. So, I mean, I appreciate the concept of, like, we've been building sustainably, and but at the same time, we have this sort of obsession with heritage in a kind of a superficial way. So how are you conceptualizing, thinking about this? Is there any room for kind of modern interventions, a sort of a renovative framework rather than a sort of a preservative or conservative framework?
Hi, Amit. Thank you. So thank you for bringing it up also, because this is one thing we also encountered going forward, because always the question we encountered from within ourselves was also to, are we saying no to like preservation or conservation of heritage? Are we against it? Or, what is that being missed? Because like you said, that heritage aspect is always being encircled on that visual thing. And the preservation and conservation is also staying on that visual aspect still now. Because when we had a talk with the heritage cell of Jaipur and also NGO working around the heritage cell, uh, all of the priorities always centered around that visual aspect only. So um, I would take one case from a different place, which is Mandava, which is another part of Rajasthan, where also they have done like because only way you can reconstruct or replace the material is by stating dilapidated condition and removing it. So there, what they have done is certain, because they wanted to convert the Havelis into Airbnbs, and there's thing called Jewelry, like that. So there's a jewelry market in Wall City, and there's a hotel called Jewelry, which has high boutique rooms and stuff, which charges around 40 45,000 per day. So that's the kind of economy it makes also. So in Mandava also, because the heritage aspect, they wanted to convert the Havelis into these kind of boutique buildings. They can only do that if they state that this is under dilapidated condition. But the building was actually not. That means it was always being preserved like that. It was like that. So what they did, the resident was there in the night. They went and broke down windows and everything and showed that this is under a dilapidated condition. So even here also, we are trying to come together what could be a good approach by looking at, because like others think, the Havelis and everything are owners who are not residing inside, they are outside, but they are using their Havelis to create a commercial element. But there are certain people mostly who are living there who are like getting affected by this heat aspect, even all the public service aspect, utility aspect also. So one framework is like the reconstruction aspect has to be controlled. You can't just register on dilapidation without proper authority. That's the first control you have to set, and need to have a material guideline, which is actually missing. Because when we look at the UNESCO Heritage Framework, there are it suggests that you should put material guidelines in architecture or spaces because they put like that. But these two aspects which are missing, that has to be primarily addressed, is what I couldn't say at this moment, which is also we'll take it forward. Thank you for bringing that also. You want to add? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think really interesting presentations. I actually had a few questions.
To introduce yourself first.
Oh, sorry. I'm Lalita from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So I had my first question I wanted to ask was to Shabrinath and Prabhanjan. And I'm curious, one of the things we talked about yesterday in the panel on interdisciplinarity was really this issue of how when you face different kinds of like a particular problem that needs to be solved, that in fact then calls for or demands a certain kind of interdisciplinarity. So I wanted to actually ask you a question on heritage here. And how do you see then the field of heritage, and particularly coming from your own experience, how do you see the need then for interdisciplinarity in the heritage work that either you are, you're practicing or that you are advocating going forward? And I had a question for Mesra as well. Thank you for that presentation. And I'm really struck by so many similarities to the Indian situation. And I wanted to ask you again, in the kinds of struggles that you see against some of this, the violences and the harms of this green transition, I'm just wondering, what do you see are the possibilities then do you see that green transition in fact can bring about radical democracy? And can we actually collapse one within the other or fold one within the other? Or are they always at odds with each other? Are they always pitted against each other? At least in the context that you are working in. And the question I had for you, Nidhi, really interesting, fascinating space and very important, I think, area to work with. And I'm just thinking here about questions of temporality, again, really important. I'm wondering if you can maybe draw out for us a little bit more, some more examples of how do you see temporality working with ontological shifts and ruptures? Because in a sense, rupture for me gives me a sense of something fairly abrupt and rapid, some kind of a break. And then how does that square with then what you were talking about in terms of normalization and in terms of incrementality? And so I think just wondering, if you could maybe give us one or two examples and think through then how labor sits within all of this, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, Lalita. Thank you for your question. So I'll take the first part. How do we see heritage? So from our experience here in Jaipur and looking at the whole city, there are like first what the governance mechanism is trying to protect is just the visual element of the city. Mostly the visual element of the city. You have to follow this color scheme, this sort of signages, etc. What it misses out on is like what are the sort of substances that made up the city and what were the experiences that was the heritage city, the old city of Jaipur, before it transpired into what it today is. So sort of it takes us to the concept of ship of Theseus, where like over time you are like changing the parts, be it social, be it demography, be it trade, economy, and even coming to the climate, but the material part, while you are preserving the value, sort of aesthetics of it, just in terms of colors, which is actually exacerbating the climatic conditions. So, for us, when we talk about heritage, we imagine that both tangible and intangible heritage, as well as the lived history and experience of this place, remains intact, while also allowing for solutions that do not mindlessly prohibit the need to adapt to for a better livable conditions. And I think so that will be my idea. And for the second story. Sorry.
Yeah. And continuing what Prabhajan had said, this can only be achieved with that interdisciplinary kind of approach and that knowledge. Because where we map that there are four major stakeholders in that contested space, each are talking to different people. That's the also the governance structure also. So don't have a one authority which grabs all this knowledge, because you have traders who live in the city and do the trading. The traders who are outside the city coming in to do the trading, and they are reporting or they are talking to the industry associations, or their community that is being built inside the city. Because yeah, many of them are not from there; they are from outside and coming in to do their daily thing. But when you take the residents, they are not residents, actually the owners of the Haveli who are living outside the city. They don't talk to anyone inside the city. Their stakeholdership only inside the city is to get that commercial value. And the people who are doing the technical advisory, like for the state action plan on climate change, the Nagarnik action plan on climate change, and everything, they talk at the municipal level or with the technical advisory committee to the governance structure. And so these actors are right now talking to different people, and these are different knowledges being given to different people. So we need to bring that together, and bringing that together is the first thing is to also to bring that trade associations, and because they also talk to the industry, which is also managed by the RICO, that is Industrial Development Corporation, because there is a lot of industries also being housed inside that whole city. So that knowledge has to bring in together to that governance is what my take on that. And, yeah.
Thanks, Lalita, for that question. Also, hi. It's been a while. On the ontological shift and rupture that you were talking about as a discontinuity, yes, here that is how I've used it. Also, I've used Hallbrad's conceptualization of rupture being this forceful discontinuity that can be a space which is destructive but also generative. So I've thought of that discontinuity that you face when all these multiple things are intersecting. And also, thank you for bringing up the temporality aspect, because the rupture is not necessarily happening in just this one moment in time. When we're seeing these different things happen, we're sort of, this kind of framework enables one to sort of extend the temporal parenthesis of our observation and see that in that longer temporal parenthesis, how these things are intersecting, that rupture is, that discontinuity is happening. Then in response to that, some labor is happening to sort of either maintain your status quo or sort of find another way out. So to give a few examples, I'm going to use a few secondary sources and also to sort of talk about normalization. Karachi Urban Lab has done this bit of work where they've done a series of podcasts on how people talk about heat. And in one of them, one of the researchers says that when they go on field, people say that, why are you asking about heat? Garmi to hoti hi hai. What is there? It's always going to be hot, which is similar to how we've encountered when we go on field and we try to talk to people about heat in Patna, and it is really hot. And it is like we on the field can feel dizzy, heat stroke, all of it while talking to people. And when we talk to people, there is either a thing of laughing about it, being amused, saying, yeah, but this is how it is. No, this is how heat will be. But it's also something that has changed over time in such slow ways, and which is why temporality is an interesting frame to look at it, because the slow ways in which it has happened, and you continuously do these bit of labor of either trying to maintain things as they were. So that little bit of labor you're doing, this little extra you're doing, the little extra work, that okay, it's really hot, but I will do this work, it's fine. So those little bits of labor, emotional or physical, that you're putting in, and then sort of sometimes being able to articulate it, at times not wanting to articulate it also, because sometimes on the field people say that, but what's the point of talking about it when I can't do anything more about it, so I just have to endure. So it's really those things about, which is why I'm talking about the politics of it, the agency of people and what costs they give. Yeah. So another example I can give you is of this another woman in Patna again, who, when we were talking about it, she started being amused and was like, I don't know why you're talking about this. Garmi to hai, to garmi hogi, sardi mein sardi hogi. So this is how seasons work. And then 2 sentences later, when you probe a bit more, she's like, yeah, but it's very hot. Earlier it used to be easier because there were trees. Now I can't even go outside the home. So, these things in there. So, yeah. Sorry, in interest of time, I'm sort of trying to keep it short, but yeah, would love to talk with you later about it.
Thank you for the question. Actually, I will try to keep short because it is very complex and multi-layer problem, and I can start with the relation in the international companies. As I see, the international companies and the capital always has a cooperation in the innovation and in legal procedures, latest progress in technology. But on the other hand, I think local people or people like us should be in a solidarity also. As you mentioned, there are some similarities in India and with India and with Mexico, Brazil. I have during my research, I come across many similarities, and I learned from this experience a lot. And about the question, radical democracy is a part of the political ideology of Kurdish movement, which has a paradigm shift in 19th after collapsing Soviet Union. Kurdish movement start to following or create another alternative ideology, democratic confederalism, for all Middle East or the region, and it emphasize and prioritized bottom to top grassroots organization, also ecological ecological governance and gender equality and democracy. And when we look at the grand transition, actually, there shouldn't be any conflict issue between these terms, because when we check the green transitions in the document of EU Green Deal or Sustainable Development Goals and other documents, it refers that it should be just transition also. But in reality, unfortunately, government and the companies conducted this process in a different way. That means government has some opportunity to change the rule of this green transition according to their profits and for the companies. For example, in Turkey, as you see in my presentation, the electricity transmission system, this fundamental infrastructure, is produced an uneven distribution in the country. With this fundamental infrastructure, you cannot provide a just transition in the sectors or in energy transition. You should have total different infrastructure which provide equal facilities to all the region. And for the alternative, I think it should prioritize ecosystem and local people livelihood and the settlements their life in this region, and then it should provide also some alternative for local production. For example, energy cooperative small local energy cooperatives with the renewable energy can be an alternative. But all the preparation, all the environmental assessment report should be prepared accordingly. I have seen in my research in the region many of environmental assessment reports prepared according to the profit of companies. They can change easily the photos. They can change easily the data from the site, and they mislead the process, unfortunately. For the struggle, I can say the biggest challenge is losing livelihood for local people and losing pasture land is another problem. Yeah, thank you very much. That's all from my side.
So so thank you all for all the presentations. I just have a couple of quick comments and suggestions. Ayushi, the trees, of course, you can count them, but every tree has a different height, a species, and different benefits to both people as well as the city's biodiversity and how it's going to matter to people who live next to it. So that's something that one should probably take into account, because just counting trees also won't be enough into the future. Mesra, one of the things about these dry land, rangelands under climate change is that across the world, the semi-arid grasslands are under threat from both climate change as well as the response to climate change. So that puts these landscapes and the people there in a very difficult situation. So how they're able to negotiate with whatever agency they have with these transitions and transformations is something that I think is at least across Asia, this is definitely the case. And I think pastoralism as a livelihood is going to probably take a big hit, unless, of course, there are other spaces that become available. So just a couple of suggestions. And Nidhi, also, in terms of to just see if the state action plans are there for climate change, but also some of the cities in India are also beginning to have their own plans. And this whole issue of slow onset and whether that's getting captured, this is something that I think also merits some attention overall. And Prabhanjan and Sabrinath, was just wondering that around the 7 square kilometer densely packed heritage part of Jaipur, is there anything around it that would matter in terms of mitigating the heat stress? Or is there anything at a decentralized level that one could do in terms of without affecting any imagination of the heritage. So I would say that comfort of people has to be part of the definition of heritage. So just a parting thought, and thanks everybody for making a very rich contribution to the political ecology of climate change and its consequences. Thank you.